yeah, it was pretty bad. I really take what I do personally as far as working with the students, and you know, I usually befriend my students after a number of years of being with me. You know, we become pretty good friends, and whether it's just in the dojo or you know, or out of the dojo, and that just really, I mean, obviously I had to go help them, but after it was over, I had to kind of step back, and it wasn't very cool. And I've actually had one or two incidences where a student kind of does something dumb because they're being hard-headed, and it makes me cringe, and I want to walk away. One of my students was testing for his black belt, and he was fighting with one of his fellow students who was a brown belt at the time, and should have been testing with him. And they were freestyling, and my instructor was there on the black belt board, and you know, these two were going at it, and this kid from Hawaii just hauled off and reverse punched this other kid right square in the head. It looked like something out of a movie. He got launched backwards, landed on his back, and slid for a good 10 feet. Myself and my instructor looked at each other and just, you know, kind of had that cringe look and shook our heads, and he, you know, that kid got back up, shook his head, and got back into it. And that was both a cringing moment and an inspirational moment to me, because that guy had been, you know, he'd been with me for a long time, and he learned, you know, what true intestinal fortitude is, and that, you know, no matter what happens, you got to keep your head in the game and stay with it.
What's your take on the ranking systems these days? Good, bad, indifferent?
Yeah, this is not a question I was looking forward to on here. I mean, kind of am, but kind of wasn't. To me, the ranking structure, there's nothing wrong with it. The system, there's nothing wrong with it. It's what people are doing with it, the way they're abusing it, the way they're ignoring, ignoring a lot of the old ways, the traditional ways. You know, I mean, people speak of tradition or getting rid of tradition. Well, if you're going to get rid of the tradition in your studio, then get rid of the belts and don't make a mockery of it, in my opinion. You know, I see. I'll give you a good example. I was surfing through the net the other day in search of doing some research for my book, and I found this gentleman that back when I was a second-degree black belt, he was a brown belt. And I noticed that just recently here he'd been promoted to the same rank that I currently am. So, you know, it's the rank thing has kind of gotten blown out of proportion, certainly, and I would say mostly in the Kempo world. The American Kempo system has had they don't have anybody policing anything, and they don't have anybody that really cares enough to police it, in my opinion. You know, they started out with the American the Senior Council, and I thought that they were going to do something, you know, and really monitor it and police the ranking issue and all of that, and it just turned into another avenue for people to gain more rank. So it kind of backfired on them.
Let's talk about your book.
My position on rank.
Yeah. Well, sorry to jump in there, but you just you dropped a little line in there about a book. Tell me what you're doing.
Well, I've actually been working on it for about 8 or 9 years now, as far as research and writing and so forth. Probably closer to 10 now that I think about it. It's a book on constituents of contact manipulation is the actual title, and it's actually about drawing and extrapolating information from our own system. This is not just, I mean, Kempoists are going to understand it and probably gain the most out of it, but it's written in such a manner that anybody from any system can gain insight into the arts from the information. I'm talking about extrapolating things that are known very little by an individual and trying to better understand them. I've done some seminars for different schools on bunkai, on some Shotokan katas, for example, where you get a fresh opinion, a fresh insight into what motion is, and a fresh understanding of what the principles of that motion are, the laws of physics, and so forth. So ultimately, what the book talks about is how to help yourself learn more about your individual system.
I like that. That will take a while.
Well, yeah. I'm hoping not too much longer.
Hey, this is always a question that's always a hit with the listeners. Has your art ever saved you? Yeah, you got a good war story?
It has saved myself, and it has saved actually a couple of friends of mine. It's funny because the first time I realized it, in fact, was I was at work and I dropped something. It hit a 2x4, and the 2x4 flipped up over and was going to hit me in the head. I stepped off to the side in an overhead block. Now my arm wasn't any better for the wear, but my head sure was saved. Another time I was actually a bouncer in a bar, and these two big guys came in looking for a fight, and I actually was able to escort one of them out without hurting anybody too terribly bad. But yeah, it's definitely, and it's funny because people don't think about this. When you study something and you attain let's say a better environmental awareness, and you avoid situations or you avoid places, you never really know what you've avoided. Does that make sense? You don't fully. I mean, and you never will. Like I don't travel down a dark alley at night. I don't. Although I don't. It doesn't scare me. It's that's not a place that's conducive to a safe living.
No, well, I mean, and how could you know what you avoided because you're trying to prove a negative?
Right.
You just can't
exactly.
do that. What's a couple of your favorite movies?
Well, I would have to say definitely, a lot of the Bruce Lee movies are the one, let's see, it's Return of the Dragon with Chuck Norris in it, just because that was an awesome fight scene.
I prefer that one myself.
Yeah, that's one of the better movies just because of that fight scene. Also, The Perfect Weapon, which is the Jeff Speakman movie. And the reason that is actually one of my favorite movies, not because of Jeff Speakman, but because of the fact that it was largely choreographed by Ed Parker.
I have sat down. I want to make a comment about The Perfect Weapon. I've sat down with The Perfect Weapon and tried to slow it down to see what he's doing in some instances, and you can't.
Nope. No, you have to. No, you have to go frame by frame, and even then, that's one of the benefits. Going back to some of the first questions that we talked about, that's one of the benefits of rebounding. It accelerates the motion so much that it's hard to perceive by the human eye. I've competed in tournaments with a set that we have called two-man set with my teacher. It took me 5 years to get him to do this with me, and we got second place over nothing against traditional systems, but we were beat out by a traditional Japanese karate kata, which is fine. The guy did an excellent job, but it was largely due to the fact that we had, of the 5 judges, 4 of them were Japanese karate, and 1 was a Chinese kung fu.
Mm-hmm.
He had a little more of an understanding of what we were doing, but the entire two-man set has some almost 200 moves in it, and we went through it in just over 20 seconds.
Well, what's your opinion? What's your opinion of tournaments? I mean, from then and today.
Well, yeah. As far as the katas and I think it's really it's way too commercialized nowadays. Back in the heyday, it was about pitting style against style and about seeing really the individual, how they did, what their skill level was. Nowadays, it's really just about how much better an actor you are than I am, you know, and how